Hello, welcome to another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live here at the Jazz Standard here in New York City. Blessing the band stage for two unprecedented sold-out nights is drummer, composer, band leader, as well as mentor Ralph Peterson, and he's playing with his group Aggregate Prime. Now, as you might know, over the last 15 years, this gentleman started Onyx Productions, in which he's produced as well as mentored a lot of seasoned musicians as well as up-and-coming musicians. Tonight I had a chance to sit down to break bread with Ralph to talk about why he decided to go solo as far as starting production, as well as talk about his role as one of the professors of percussion at Berkeley. Now, as you might know, Alan Dawson was one of the gentlemen that started the program in Berkeley in the 70s, and he has also been a very, very pivotal mentor as well as instructor. And some of his students include Antonio Sanchez, E.J. Strickland, Tyshawn Sorey, as well as Mark Whitfield Jr., just to name the endless few. Now, during the 1980s, this gentleman also was part of a young class of musicians called the Young Lions. And these musicians came out in the 80s where they backed and accompanied the great stalwarts of jazz musicians. This gentleman has recorded and toured with the likes of Mr. Stanley Turrentine, Michael Brecker, as well as David Murray and Branford Marsalis, just to name the endless few. So sit back, relax, and enjoy highlights of Mr. Ralph Peterson and his group Aggregate Prime. You know, 5 years, man, you've gone through colon cancer, hip replacement,
Liver cancer.
liver cancer.
Yeah, yeah. And now it's back in my lymph nodes, and I'm back on chemo protocol. But the chemo is working. My CEA, which is the carcinogenic marker, is down 4 points after only the first treatment, and we're gonna hammer at this thing for 6 months, every other week. So I'm confident, and I'm not afraid. I'm energized. You know, I'm working out 4 days a week. I've cut my mile swim down from an hour and 10 minutes to 54 minutes. I'm doing 5K on the elliptical 4 days a week. Yeah, man. I'm living
God is good.
all the time. All the time, man. 22 years clean, 22 and a half years clean, you know, from the demon. I'm grateful, man. So, you know, it's about the work. It's about the work, it's about this music, and it's about moving forward. Sharks only swim in one direction.
That's right.
That's right. So we're glad to be here, and we're grateful and excited about the new release, Inward Venture, and we are excited about the new release, I Remember Boo. And, you know, against all odds and the conventional business minds, yes, I released 2 records in the same month because it's not an artist thing, it's a label thing. You know, I'm trying to develop a body of work. I developed a body of work as an artist. Now I'm trying to develop a body of work as a label. You know, and so pretty soon you're going to start to see other artists besides vocalist Lainey Cook, you know, presenting on my label. I want my label to be a launch pad, a platform, you know, for talent.
Onyx Productions.
Yes, sir.
What made you decide to just say, okay, let's forget going with the majors and let's just do it as grassroots?
2 things. Wanting to do a trumpet record, which I'm getting the final touches on my dental work that is kind of the, what do they call it, personal amends from the thrilling days of yesteryear. I wasn't looking after my teeth, and eventually it caught up to me and started to have an effect on my horn playing. And so I found a great dentist who's hooking me up. So playing trumpet was one. Doing a trumpet record was one motivation. But the kicker was Gary Bartz. I'm sitting outside a hotel with Orrin Evans and a bunch of other people, some older than me, some my age, all of us complaining about the record business, right? Oh, the record business ain't. I was on Blue Note, and, you know, people were on other labels. And Gary Bartz is sitting over in the corner, you know, like reading the newspaper, magazine or something. He says, you know, y'all need to be quiet. Y'all ain't in the record business. What do you mean, Gary? You got OTB, you know, V, you know, Blue Note, Gold Disc Award. He said, man, you ain't in the record business. You an employee of somebody who's in the record business. I'm still, it's, you know, it's going over my head what he's trying to teach me. Finally, he said it. He said, you don't own nothing. And that, I tell you, man, that just stuck with me and bothered me. And when it was clear that no label was going to do this trumpet record, those 2 experiences came together on October 10th, 2010. 10-10-10 was the release date of Outer Reaches. And the first record was an organ record. The first 2 records were organ records because organ was where organ clubs in Newark and East Orange and Jersey City, Peppermint Lounge, Mr. West, LC, Sparky J's, that's where I cut my teeth musically. That's where I grew up, you know. So the brother that was here, he and his wife came. He's a good friend of mine, and he's from Newark, you know. And so I started talking to him about that. He said, man, oh, I used to run in all them spots, man. So those are the great organ clubs, and doing those records was an acknowledgement of how much I gained from being around people like Herbie Morgan and Leo Johnson, Dave Eubanks, and so many great players from that era. And so now it's grown, and we're doing big band records now. So
I want to get into that. And part of the big band record is also about you giving back, because you at Berkeley, and this is a program that Alan Dawson started back in the 70s, right?
That's right. The percussion department of Berkeley College of Music was started by Alan Dawson. I am one of a number of drummers who didn't have the good fortune to study with him. So many did. But now that I'm there, I'm able to bring my experiences to the Berkeley experience. And my experiences have proven valid. And the track record of students that have come behind me and from me, don't need defending, from Justin Faulkner to Mark Whitfield, Jonathan Blake, Antonio Sanchez, down the line. Corey Fonville, I'm just so proud of everybody. EJ, Ari Holding, And so, but 35 years ago, I was a student at Rutgers University and finally worked my way on the Art Blakey's radar and got to sit in with him in '82. And by March of 1983, I was sitting on the bandstand at the right hand of our father, who Art Blakey, you know what I'm saying? With the responsibility of mirroring and mimicking him in the two-drummer Jazz Messenger Big Band. And so 35 years later, I'm trying to show my gratitude for the experience by sharing it with my students now. So we have the Gen X Big Band, Generation Next, all these kids are under 21, 22 years old. 7 out of the 10 pieces of music on the recording, the arranging was done by the students. Yeah, the writing is heavy, ain't it? Right. Miss BC, Bobby Watson, Pam Watson, to New York, Donald Brown, and For Paul are the only 3 tunes that weren't arranged by Berkeley students on that record.
what's the most important thing that you have to put and drill into these next musicians?
That if you always stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. And that this music is a language and there's a vocabulary involved with learning the language. And you don't learn the language carrying 8, 10, 15,000 tunes around in your phone. That doesn't make you a student. That makes you a collector. The student might only have 15 or 20 records, but he knows every note on every tune of every record by every instrument, not just theirs. You got to learn and hear past your instrument to understand the symbiosis between the bass and drums, the bass and piano, the bass and the soloist, you know. And when you start to hear that way, and you have to know music, right? Because you can get good on your instrument, drums, for example. And there are a lot of talented drummers that have hands of fire, fists of fury, but they're musically a mile wide and an inch deep. And the lack of depth is what keeps them stuck on stupid and only able to revert to velocity and math.
You know, one of my mentees, his name is Dom Gervais. He's at Berkeley. Okay. He's a drummer. And he likes loud. He's young. You know them young. He like loud. Well, you know, and he's young. And
all that energy.
Yeah.
You don't know what to do with it.
But I keep telling them that, you know, guess what? Sometimes you got to play and learn everything. You got to know Latin. Yeah. You got to know a little bit.
See Francisco Mela.
There you go.
He needs to go take Neil Smith's brush lab.
There you go.
You see, or Iran's brush lab, or John Hazilla. You know, Berkeley gets an unfair reputation because haters gonna hate. You know what I mean? And there is a degree of truth in the criticism of the bubble. There's a bubble at Berkeley. And so as soon as I meet, particularly my incoming students, I ask them questions. Oh, you all state? Oh, wonderful. Yeah, you're all county. You know you're in an environment completely made up of predominantly all state and all county and all music students from everywhere. Around the world. So you know what that makes you? Nothing special. See, a new idea can't be grafted onto a closed mind.
That's right.
And somehow an opening has to be made. Sometimes you got to make that opening with a spiritual sledgehammer. And I ain't go to Berkeley to make friends. I went to Berkeley to guard what I was given by the masters.
And Michael Carvin was one of those cats that put that, and that's another thing too, because the band stage, I think, is the most critical part of a musician. Especially like you said, you can learn all the notes, and like you said, you're a collector but
got all the tunes. Yeah, I had an experience with a student who has gone on in MP&E to be one of the hottest young engineers on the set out in California. He's working with Beyonce, Jay-Z, Tony Maselli's studio. He's working out of Tony's studio in L.A., Tyler Scott. One day, I was having a conversation with Neil about how we used to walk around with bunches of records under each arm. And we would play those records until we scratched going back. What was that? And go back. Zzz, zzz, zzz. Then that record didn't play no more. We had to go buy another copy of that record, right? And we were talking about stuff like the Super Scope, where you could slow stuff down, and learn transcriptions, but you had to learn them in all keys because you could, like digitally now, you could slow some stuff down and keep it in the same key. Back then, if you slowed it down, you had to learn it in the lower key, and then bring it up. So you would learn a solo in all keys, and what that did for your musical acumen. So anyway, the student is listening. He's like, "Yeah, I got a lot of tunes." I said, "Yeah, man, how many?" You know, when you catch them leaning in, it makes it easy to pop them on the chin, right? Because they like. I said, "Yeah, man, how many tunes you got in your phone?" He said, "Oh, about 8,000-10,000." I said, "Oh yeah, how many Coltrane solos can you sing?"
Look, he looked like a deer in the headlights.
You know, like the Price is Right sound. And he ain't have no. So I said, "You know what that makes you? A collector. Because if you got a Renoir and a Gauguin and Da Vinci and all the other great artists, and you got the money to buy all of them paintings and have them in your house, does that mean you can go then buy a paintbrush and know anything about painting? No, because you're not a student, you're a collector. Right? And so the technology is a double-edged sword. They have an advantage that I wish we had. So we have to try to instill in them the kind of hunger and drive that we remember as young people. That, you know, I remember, you know, I heard Jeff Watts, Wallace Roney, and Arthur Ames all in the same moment. I almost went back to running intermediate hurdles. You know?
You know, Onyx is very, very important because, like you said earlier, the record industry really has become dismantled with this whole digital divide right now. And now it's costing less money to produce your own product now with the technology that you have.
The technology has become the great equalizer for the independent artist. Okay? And right now in the music business, The most expensive thing about making a record is publicizing it. You know? And so that will reach a tipping point as well. And there are new, really effective young publicists like Lydia Liebman who are coming on the scene with that hunger that was instilled in her by watching her father. Right. You dig what I'm saying? And so it's a joy working with her. She's open, she knows music, and she's young, so she understands all the technology. She makes me keep my Twitter up. She makes me keep my Instagram up, you know, because you know, I still have a MySpace page if it was left up to me.
Rob, do you think that the record industry, because now all the labels have bought up all the old labels, so
well,
that
the
means
big fish eat the little fish. That's the way it always is. But the music, it reaches a point, and this has happened before, where it became necessary for artists to reclaim ownership of larger parts of the process. Mingus had a label. You know, a lot of cats had labels.
Herb Alpert was real smart when he and Jerry Moss sold A&M. He owns all the masters to the Herb Alpert collection, the Tijuana Brass, and his solo stuff.
And you know, the larger companies sit on this music, which only depresses the economy of the industry. Every time I release a record, Capitol Records, the Toshiba and I should re-release something of mine. You know what I mean? If they're ever really interested in getting their money back. But see, that old formula wasn't based on actually making all the money back so that the artist could be free.
Even with all of your old catalog, they haven't
All
even
print.
even on the digital side.
All out of print. I saw online once a vinyl version of V was selling for $130. Yeah, yeah. But the intellectual property is mine. So one by one, record by record, all of that music that I recorded will eventually see the light of day again on Onyx Records.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live here at the Jazz Standard here in New York City. I'd like to personally thank the incomparable Ralph Peterson for his time. Make sure you go out and support all of Ralph's projects, including the latest album on his website, ralphpetersonmusic.com, as well as you can follow him and his updates, as well as info on his upcoming tour dates and club dates on his Facebook page at facebook.com, Onyx Productions music label. I'd like to also personally thank Lydia Liebman for arranging my time with Mr. Peterson, as well as the staff and management here at the Jazz Standard for their warm hospitality. As always, please visit my website, www.thepacereport.com, for my weekly column, as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.
Yeah.